Hello, and I'm really glad to be here with my old dance teacher, Wolfgang Stang, who I adore. And so I'm so thrilled that this is happening. And I was just introducing what I want to talk about with him, saying that it's something to do with quality of soul and how you work with people. And I don't really have the answers. I just wanted to explore it. So I'm going to leap in and start recording now. So here we are.
Yes, no, when you mentioned that, I just came back to what my mom told me when I was a little boy. And she kept saying, Wolf, uh, education is the most important. It's very, very important. But the most important is the education of the heart. Herzensbildung. In German, Herzensbildung. And that was always stayed with me, extraordinary, that you have to not just be able to analyze things in your brain, but you have to find a way to communicate with your heart. That's Herzensbildung. And that's what she gave me, I think, without knowing it. That was my kind of focus in life.
Beautiful. Yes, I think often it's like a parental blessing, isn't it, in a way? And once you've seen it, did you see that with your mother? Did she exemplify that?
Well, Mom had a very hard time because at that time also, she was 7, can you imagine those days? She was 7 years older than my father. And those days it was, and I came and she was 40. I don't know, the difficult thing, I never found out what happened to her before she met my father. I have no idea. I just knew that she came from the Harz Mountains, which was then at that time the former East Germany. But she came before the war and she married my father. And we just happened to live in West Berlin because father lived there. And so I grew up with a division of my family also, my family on her side. And so that obviously also somehow affected me somehow deep down, and because I loved that family. And I think we used to be able to go to East Germany, but only with a visa. Now, the peculiar thing was, many people don't know that the Berliners were given free access to their city when the Allies made the rules, but not to East Germany. So we could only go within East Berlin, and the East Berliners could come to West Berlin, but you could not go cross over. If you walked in the middle of the street, one side was East Germany, one was East Berlin, you were fine in the East Berlin side. If they caught you on the other side, you didn't have a visa, they put you in prison. Simple as that. So that was always that kind of fear to do the right thing. And we always had to go over before 61, of course. So, and then my auntie died, my mom's favorite sister, who had always stayed with us because they could come by train, and then they take the underground or the overground train and come to West Berlin. They were just asked, why you want to go there, and blah, blah, blah. And then this auntie died, and we had to go. Mommy took me to East Berlin because we had to get a visa for her. And she said she would like to apply to go to her sister's funeral. And the woman just said, what do you mean? She's dead. You can't see her. Refused. That's what it was. So Mom couldn't go. I was privileged. Children up to the year of 14 were allowed to go to East Germany because I thought I could influence children and blah, blah, whatever, and critical thinking, because I had a cousin who had a farm. He was part of the East German thing. So Mom, we never had a holiday. So Mom sent me and my other brother, one brother, to East Germany because there was a farm. And of course, sometimes I kept thinking, how did they do it? Because all this, there were people living, there was only, we lived in my brother and me in a small room, and they had the aunt living there, and they had this one living there. Everybody lived together, as you know. Equally, in our house, we only had 2 rooms. But that comes with my love for people, I suppose. Then in the 50s, all the relatives escaping East Germany didn't want to go to a refugee camp. And where did they come to? Stange family. So Mom would look after them, sometimes 3 weeks, 4 weeks, one cousin stayed for 5 years, I think. So we had a larder next to the kitchen that was converted, just about a bed was fitting in there. That was his room. All right. So every time we had so many people staying, and I just loved all this commotion. But my eldest brother, who was a bit more introvert, who I loved, the one who died about 6 years ago, and he said, I hated it. I hate, because he was older, obviously he was 5 years older. When I was 10, he was 15, very difficult years. He wanted to have his peace and more peace and those people coming in. And later on, when my cousin left, he got that room. He used to lock himself into his room. Nobody could see him. People would say, how is Günther? He's all right. He's in his room. He would never come out to greet anybody or see anybody. That was him. We just accepted that was him. But I was the opposite. I loved it. I loved having people around me. And then I was in East Germany by myself, and they sometimes closed the border to Berlin. That means East German people were not allowed to travel to Berlin. They just said 2 weeks no travel. So that was at that time. And when we came with my cousin's mother-in-law, we came to the train station, and she asked, "Oh, is it lifted? The ban lift? Yeah, you can go again." So she said to her mother, "Why don't you go with Wolfgang and take our son to go for holiday?" But she said, "I haven't got any clothes. Don't worry, I sent the parcel. You go." So she put us into the train, and when I arrived in Ost Berlin, Mommy came to collect us. I said, you hide. I'm going to give her a big surprise. So I said, Mommy, I have a surprise for you. Ta-da! And she came out, and Mom just went, how wonderful. Come on then. I didn't realize that my godmother, her husband, and 2 children had also come from Erfurt, also east, and stayed there already. So I just do not know how Mommy coped anyhow. And I suppose what I try to say is that kind of commitment to people, I someone had it from my mother.
Yes.
My father never opposed, obviously. He went to visit, but he must have had a terrible time too.
Yes.
And I remember sometimes when people came and I knew there was nothing more there. They said, "Oh, come on, eat." And that obviously equally was from that. And I said, "But there's nothing there." And they would politely say, "No, thank you." I said, "Thank God, because there's nothing there to give anymore." He gave everything. But he would also go out of his way to help. So from that point of view, I was brought up with love. And I think also the thing that later on be able to give back, because I had that embrace love, even though between mom and dad things sometimes were very good. And dad used to drink a lot, and that was very difficult for mom, of course. But somehow or the other, there was a love from both sides for the children, and that I never had any worries about that. And we never had very much, but what we had, we shared. And now when you hear about the refugees and all that, I never had any new clothes because I had the eldest brother. It came down to my other one, and after him, I got it. And when I go out of it, Mommy would wash them, iron them, and tell me, take them to the refugees. So we would all the time give back. So that was a kind of, just to tell you, maybe when you come to think of the issue of why do we do it, or what compels us. Sometimes you don't know. Now I'm talking to you, and I think, oh, that must be it.
Yes.
That's what in the background it was there, that I got that installed in me, that you have to support other people who are different. And I remember also my first time, there was a Down syndrome chap called also Wolfgang. And I remember I went outside, some other people teased him and did that. And I pushed him away. I said, "How dare you, go away." And the mother came out and she was crying, and she was so grateful to me. And so somehow I said, "Well, what are you doing?" And so I stayed friends with her. When I came to England, I used to come back and see her and the son. So I never had any difficulties in thinking some people were different or why. That was somehow there. I don't know. And equally, I was brought up a Protestant, of course, and the rest of it. But then equally, the neighbor would say, "Oh, don't talk to that woman. She's a heathen." But that woman was the most wonderful person, the most warm, and I thought she was had more godliness in her than any of the Christians I knew who ran to church every Sunday. So then I questioned from early on what is right and wrong in that. I had my belief, and I went to communion. I was to my big confirmation, and I was really completely involved in it. Not like some of my friends that just did it because the parents wanted it, but I was convinced, and I had that love for that. And I suppose that's why, with all the difficulties, we can never, once we had a deep experience of love, Christian love, you can never get away with it. Even though, as I told you, or even then, I never thought somebody was bad, even before I went to Sri Lanka. And when I went to Sri Lanka, and I went to a Buddhist temple, a Hindu temple, and even to George as a Catholic, of course, he'd go into Catholic churches, and seeing that devotion of people, which I had lost by then. I didn't have that kind of anymore. I was envious to have that kind of feeling, to believe so strong in that, but it never left me, of course, luckily. But it was not what I experienced when I had my first communion, when I really cried. So that was all the different things. And then I kept thinking, how can people say, if I go to a Buddhist temple or Hindu temple and see this devotion of people, I just say, and I pray, I said, God, they love you, but they know you under a different name. That's all what for me, because it's good over evil, that the majority of professions are, and then that's all that cares for me. So I do not, as I said, even though I was brought up a Christian, and I still at time, and I have the time to go to the church, but I have a more global feeling of what love is for people, and if they love Lord Buddha, if they love Krishna, if they love Lord Ganesh, that's up to them. But they believe in the same thing. It's just a different interpretation of people, So that also formed me, I think, the whole thing, the whole experience. Yeah. So now that's part of what I'm doing.
That's perfect. That is.
So,
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyhow, so that's what I think maybe where this whole thing, Herzensbildung, the education of the heart, stems from. I had lots of experiences and examples from my mom.
Yes.
And also every Christmas she would send parcels to East Germany or the relatives there. We had very little, but what we had. And Dad used to say, I don't care, because we had hard times after the war. He said, even if we are sitting on an orange box, I don't want furniture, but I want food for my children. So he was always more concerned, not how beautiful furniture we had or anything. No, he tried to get through. And of course, Dad was a Ofensetzer. That means he was building fireplaces. So naturally, in the winter, there was no work for him. So Mom was a sea mistress. She was a very good creative and all that. And she got us through. I mean, it was Mom who, from morning to night, she would work and work and work. So I saw that kind of ethic of somebody who knows. And then she got Dad. Then he did work, got him up, made him sandwiches, then made sandwiches for us to go to school, and we come home, But then also we were brought up also early to look after ourselves. And she was busy. She said, you go and make yourself something. So others and me will go around. And our favorite thing was Kartoffelpuffer, potato pancakes.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so I had to peel the potatoes. Dieter, the second one, who was still alive, he used to have to decorate them.
Yes.
And then the eldest, he was the one who was frying them.
Excellent.
And I still love potato pancakes to the very day. I still make it. I use the mixer. I don't do that. So that was all the whole thing that kind of got me, I suppose. Yeah. So now you better ask your question. What do you want?
Well, no, I think you probably answered it, but it is that sort of. So I suppose when I when I first sort of worked with you and saw you, it was that thing, which in a way is what you're saying about your mum, about where just that you meet. I think it's something that one meets people at a depth. So you're not seeing what society sees. You're not seeing someone who can't do this or can't do that or looks like they're not able to achieve, but that there's somewhere that one's reaching them. I think it is that when you were talking about love, it's like it is a language, isn't it? That depth of love, that acknowledgement of the person as important and valid, and it doesn't need anything more than that you're just a person there in that space. And so it's that way of sort of reaching people, isn't it? Yeah, so I think it's just that. And I remember that you would give people time as well, because I think that's quite important, isn't it? It's not just going to someone and going, oh, hello, da, 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 and then, oh, there's no response, I'll move on. But actually just sort of sitting in that space and waiting and just, yes.
Yeah, that's the most important, I think, even looking back on the early days. Yes, I would realize that some people need longer time to feel what I want rather than to instinctively. They have to learn to feel what I want. So I would do things with them or move without talking.
Mm.
Try to draw them into my conversation, trying to understand what they're trying to say. I suppose that's what it is. So you're trying to zoom in on where they are. And of course, I always tell young students when they come and they want to learn, I say, well, don't give up. Just because somebody doesn't respond to you and they come the first time, it doesn't mean they don't like you or they're just nervous. Because can you imagine another room with maybe 10 people, 15, 20 people, and and you're shy already. So how do you how do you give them time? And then just go back and I always know by touching them the tension. I know they don't want me. I said, oh, I'm sorry, I apologize, I go back, but I won't ignore them. So I would come back and call their name and say, Kenny, what we're doing this for you or whatever, and then go back and still nothing, still nothing. All right. Then of course the carer will say, oh, we take her out. I said, no, why? She hasn't gone out. Once some person stays in the room, it's a commitment. No matter if they do what you want to do or not, they are there. That means they're committing themselves not to run out. I mean, there are people sometimes who run out. Run out, if they want to come back, they can come back. And I tell them, all right, bring them back next week. Don't just ignore just because they don't like it the first time. So, why should they like my way?
Yes, yes.
But it's only my way, so they may something else. So you just instinctively know, you give time, as you said, give time, let it happen. And I remember, I may have told you that, I tell most people that story about Sophie, who I had when I was at Normansfield, a long stay institution. And Sophie would come, severe Down syndrome, no verbalization. And she would sit at the grand piano. She would come in and she'd sit under the grand piano. That was it. I tried to get her out. She tried to spit at me. She tried to bite me. And sometimes she tried to take her clothes off. I said, no, okay. And I go back and let her be. But somehow I've sensed that she was not without. And because when we had a tea break, I made tea and I said, Sophie, I'm not your servant. If you want a tea, you damn well get it. I'm not bringing it. She comes out, grabs the tea and goes back under the piano. So I knew, well, there's something there. But she would not, as I said, respond like the others. So one day, a member of staff came in and said, what's she doing under the piano? I said, why don't you ask her? So he was really angry with me. And he slammed the door and walked out. He's not learning anything in this class. So the next week I came back and I was summoned to the top. I've never been to the top, where the registrar was there. And I was introduced. I said, yeah. And he said, I have to talk to you. I had to complain about you. Then, of course, I immediately clicked and I said, yes. But also this man had come before. And then he came back after about 4 months and she was still under the piano. This is what it was. So it wasn't just a one He saw, that's why he complained. After 4 months, he didn't see any improvement, but she was still on the piano. So I said, well, it's about Sophie Constantinople. I said, yes. I said, do you know her? Because he didn't know her.
Mm.
Of course. Well, yeah. But if you don't know her, maybe I should tell you a little bit about her. Because when I come to collect her, she sits under a table. So obviously there's some sort of security she feels being under something. I said, but learning is a very strange thing. I said, you see, when she comes, she learns differently because we have sometimes policemen coming for, they have to learn, they come for 2 weeks or something. There are other people, other music changes constantly from classical to ethnic and whatever. So she learns that, and there's different ways she observed. And I never ignored her. I would say, when people improvise, that Sophie, this dance is for you. And she looked at me because I looked and she looked away. And then I looked slowly, she looked, and I pretend I didn't see her, so she kept looking. So I knew, I said, she's learning differently from the rest of them, but there is some progress in a different way. But I said, you don't know her, but I know Sophie is the only class she comes to. If you tell me there's something else that she would benefit better from, I happily let her go. But I beg you, please let her stay, because the grand piano is next to the door. I said, Sophie is not that stupid. If she doesn't want to be there, she can run out. She never ran out once.
Mm.
So she is there for 2 hours with me and she doesn't run out. So that is my commitment from her to us.
Mm.
I think it took about maybe 18 months, ages, when she came out and joined the circle. And I didn't say anything. Then she went back again after 10 minutes. Then she came out again. In the end, I literally could touch her. I could never touch her. I did a partner pull with her, forward and back. And
Yes.
and so I realized, my God, this is extreme. But luckily, I was there long enough to see that there's a possibility, because I let her be. I did not force herself to do it my way.
Yes.
Very often when you do things like that, there was another autistic girl called Penny. And I don't know what, I was very low. I was on myself on a very low. And I come there and she sits on a chair like this. And I just looked at her and I said, Penny, my love, why do I come here? You don't even know who I am. You don't care one way or the other. Why am I supposed to come here? I really don't know. And suddenly her hand came out and she stroked my face. God, I went to pieces.
Yes.
I said, oh my God, darling, I'm sorry, I didn't realize. Thank you. So it's moments like that.
Yes. No.
When the students gave me encouragement, and I knew I was not wrong. I must carry on. That was maybe 35, 40 years ago.
Yeah.
Still with me. Penny is still with me. So yeah, and that of course later on, you have different ways of when it happens. When you see, you have enough example in your group. I've seen it when I came to the workshops, and but to give them the space that you provide and we provide, that's all what it is. Giving a secure space where people can be. That is so important. Where else do we have that people allow you to be who you are and try to help you to understand who you are and respect you for what you are and what you do and what you give to us.
Yes.
We forget always, people always think that we are the ones. We are not the ones. They are our teachers. They have, so that's why we are on the same wavelength, because when you started and you had your idea and it's like, I'm so proud of you because you're far exceeded whatever I have done.
Oh, rubbish, but thank you.
Yeah. is with all your spreading out to poetry, to painting, to drama, you have not just a small part of a movement. You spread out and let other people find their own way in a different medium. Because that I have never done.
No, well, I think that was just because of where I live, you know, and because I'm not so well dance trained, so it's more eclectic. And my husband painting, but
No,
yeah,
because you're influenced, but I have been influenced by my one here, but I did do very much in painting way. But I always felt I could never live up to what he's doing.
I
Because,
think, yeah, sorry. Go.
yeah, so that cut me out from that. But no, even you or the girl that came from New Zealand who I trained and what she's built up there again, it's amazing. Then the people who came from America and what they have done, extraordinary. And I just feel it. I feel so small when I see what people have developed from just a small little seed that you gave them. That they created a blooming garden.
Well, I think you gave me a lens to look through. I think, you know, like the heart is moved. Like I was moved for the people I knew who had learning disabilities at that time, but I didn't know what was possible. Do you know what I mean? And I didn't know how to reach them. And I think in your sessions, what I felt was I wasn't, you know, was in dance and I love dance, but it was more something about learning about being with people and that thing of and I think it's really interesting you saying that and making that safe space. And I think I saw you do that a lot. And I think that's really important. The one protects the space so that the people know that within that space, we can fail and often fail, but that there's a commitment to them to be able to be themselves and a respect. And I think what you were saying, like that it's a conversation, it's not an imposition. I'm not running a session that you have to join in with or you have to do these things. It's much more than that, isn't it? It's wanting to, and yes, they teach us. It's symbiotic, isn't it? It's a reciprocal blessing. It's not one way.
Yeah, but then also on the other hand, you and me, we were very blessed with someone extraordinary partners. With George, I knew he supported me. He was there for me. When I come home, I know I have that kind of warmth. I'm a Cancer and I need that kind of homecoming.
Yes.
And that was George was my survival kit really from that point of view when it came to the bad times. And when I started, I got a grant to study, you know, and he had lost his job and we were extremely poor. And I just had a grant and he had no job and the rest of it. And I said, oh, George, I can go back to cooking. You know, he said, don't be daft. You like what you're doing? I said, yes, but no, we get through this, you carry on. So he was always there to push me when I also thought maybe I should throw in the towel because things become economically very difficult for us. The only thing what I can tell you now, there is, I'm not allowed leeks. Now he's listening, so he's yeah. So I'm not allowed to cook leeks or tripe. I had tripe and onions, which I learned to cook in England. And I tripe and tomato sauce, tripe curry. I tell you anything. I'm not allowed tripe or yeah. But he helped me through that. So now we are both together and I'm trying to help him through this period now.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Without you, I wouldn't be nothing, Georgie. Yeah. Don't remember.
It is. I know. Well, it's that reciprocity, isn't it? It's that, you know, because yeah, Peter's been unwell recently, and I suddenly realised I absolutely need him. He's my absolute sort of. He's seen all the work I've ever done. He's my critic. He's my support. He's my and without that, and I think if people are extrovert in the world, if you're blessed, there's someone behind you holding you that you go home to. That sort of yes.
Yes, Georgie. Yeah. Okay. I'll be back in a minute. Not too long. Wait.
Do you want? Should we stop, Wolfgang? We can stop at any point.
Yeah, all right. Yes, so that's it. So we are obviously like two twins.
Yes, yes.
Twins locked by a grip, like Adam and Eve. So that's what it is. Yeah.
Yes. Well, I am just so grateful because I think it is that thing, isn't it? And I think it's very beautiful. I feel very grateful to you. I think the only last thing is that I know that, you know, so the soulfulness and the heart from your mother and your family, and then see that sort of vision from Hilda Holger of what's possible, you know, and I think that's what you gave to people who've worked with you, that vision of what's possible.
I'm not running away. I'm here every day. If you want to ask more questions tomorrow, day after, or whatever, got the line now. How quickly just press it. And there you
Yes.
were.
Oh, here we are. And this might be enough. So I'll go back and I'll look at it. And thank you,
Yeah.
darling. Thank you so much. God bless.
Bye. Good. Bye. Bye.